Okay, hello everyone. I think we're going to get started here. It is now 7:15 my time. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining this evening's PD session, Transitioning from Athlete to Coach. Before we dive into the session, here are the main topics of discussion that you can expect to be covered. Please note that there will be time at the end of the presentation for any questions or comments you may have. First, we will go over taking the next step, learning your new role in sport, challenges athletes encounter in early stages of coaching, creating boundaries with your new position in power, importance of being a role model, finding a mentor, and the benefits of coaching. Now, let's get started. My name is Ariella Shimnowski. I currently work at Sport Manitoba as the Associate Program Coordinator for Fit Kids, Healthy Kids, a physical literacy program for children ages 2 to 12. I have just recently graduated from the University of Winnipeg with a Bachelor in Kinesiology. I've been involved in sports since I was 5 years old, as a competitive gymnast for 11 and a coach for the last 7. I have coached parented classes, recreational classes, and competitive levels. The athletes I worked with were anywhere between the ages 2 to 15. I was first introduced to the sport through a family friend who encouraged my parents to place me in a recreational program at Springer's Gymnastics Center here in Winnipeg. I was hooked right away. It was everything I loved doing, running, jumping, and flipping. My coaches quickly took notice of my natural ability for the sport at a young age. They told my parents that I would show great potential in a competitive stream. And so I began right away. After some time, I had moved gyms where I would spend the majority of my training spent at Corden Gymnastics Center. This is where I began to make momentum in my competitive journey. I was quickly moving up and advancing into more challenging skills. I was someone who, when given a challenge, I would try and try again until I was successful. I was very dedicated to doing well and perfecting my skills. I loved absolutely everything about gymnastics. I enjoyed the sense of fear when trying new skills, creating my own routines that expressed who I was, and how resilient and tough it forces you to be at such a young age. Throughout my time at Corden Gymnastics Center, I was fortunate enough to have excellent coaches by my side, coaches that I would work closely with for the next few years. They were all so knowledgeable, each with their own unique way of teaching. Because of how different each were, I was able to learn in many different ways. I am so fortunate to have had such supportive coaches who guided me every second of the way, coaches that I could trust and look up to. It is important to have coaches that challenge you in your athletic journey, but that also take the time to support you. Competing as an athlete takes more than just physical ability. It can also be mentally challenging. Over the years, I'd been advancing quickly. My competitive nature was a driving force for me, finding myself in a place where I was training 4 to 5 times a week. I was determined to push myself and motivated to do better and better. However, I was always my worst enemy. I had high expectations for myself and never wanted to disappoint. Gymnastics is not an easy sport. You are competing to be flawless, to do a routine with minimal mistakes. That's the goal. And so when mistakes are made, it can be difficult to overcome them. I was also hard on myself and did not like to mess up. But thankfully for the coaches I had, they taught me how to talk through what I was feeling, showing me positive and healthy ways to overcome failure and to create success. When I was 16, I was training for a competition that was just around the corner. I was training harder than ever and feeling stronger than ever. I was at the peak of my training. When practicing my bar routine, I suffered an injury that would keep me out of the sport for good, or so I thought. I had found myself lying on my back, looking up at the ceiling, not knowing of what just happened. All I knew was that I was in so much pain and couldn't feel my fingers or my toes. As a gymnast, injuries are very common and at times quite unavoidable. Many gymnasts can give you a long list of injuries they've experienced, and I was no exception, with many fractures and concussions. After falling, I lied still on the ground, too scared to move. My coaches came quickly to my side, comforting me and assuring that I would be okay. These were the same coaches who trained me since my very first day, the ones who always got me back on my feet after every fall. My coaches decided to call 911, and I was then quickly sent to the hospital where I would begin my recovery journey. After my injury, my doctor had told me I had suffered a severe concussion and that it would be in my best interest to quit gymnastics as to avoid any long-term injuries. I was told that if I experienced any more concussions, I would find myself in a much more difficult situation. Hearing the news was heartbreaking because even though I didn't want to listen to what he had to say, I knew he was right. I knew I had to take care of my well-being and that it was time to say goodbye to gymnastics, even if it was the last thing I wanted to do. I spent months at home recovering, doing the best I could to get myself back on my feet. Recovery was long. It was physically and mentally challenging. But after some time, I started to miss gymnastics. I was frustrated because I knew I wasn't supposed to train, but felt like my journey wasn't complete. I knew if I couldn't train, that I would have to find another way to get back into gymnastics. Before my injury, my coaches were trying to convince me to join junior coaching. This was a program at our gym where gymnasts could train while shadowing senior coaches before or after classes. This was an opportunity to learn how to become a coach at an early age and eventually coach on your own. My coaches always felt like I'd be a great junior coach, but at the time, I showed no interest. And so, after my injury, I thought back to what my coaches had said, to try junior coaching and not let my knowledge and passion go to waste. So I thought I would at least try if it meant I could still be involved in gymnastics. I called up my coaches and asked if they were in need of any more junior coaches, and to my luck, they said yes. So here I am, post-injury, reluctantly agreeing to become a junior coach. I started to think about what I just got myself into. I was so excited to be back in the gym, but it was a bit different. I was now surrounded by 20 little screaming kids. And I thought, wait, I don't even like kids. If someone were to tell my younger self that when I was older, I was going to coach a bunch of kids, I would have told them that they're nuts. At the time, I felt that I didn't like kids and that kids didn't like me. I had no idea how to talk to kids, never mind teach them anything. So I started to resent junior coaching. My shift started at 8 a.m. on Saturdays, and for a teenager, that is probably the worst thing to hear. That you have to wake up early instead of sleeping in until noon. So to me, junior coaching had now become one of the last things I wanted to do. Now you're probably thinking, well, weren't you the one who asked for the job? Yes, I did. But all I wanted was to be back in the gym surrounded by my sport, but I had no idea what that meant. So like a typical teenager, I showed up with not enough sleep, grumpy that I even had to get out of bed, and to now be with kids that I was pretty sure I didn't like. But I did it anyways. But the more I coached, I started to understand that being there was a state of mind. If I showed up with a bad attitude, I would end up being grumpy the whole time. So I decided to change my attitude and go into every shift with a new outlook. I tried to pick one thing that I liked about my day after every shift. Some days I could only name one thing. But as I continued, it turned into 2 things, then 3 things, until everything was my favorite part. As I changed my attitude, my whole outlook towards kids had changed. All these kids want to do is have fun and spend time with their coaches. And so I thought, I have to at least do that for them. So I made sure they were having fun. And once I did that, I started to have fun as well. The more fun I had, the more approachable I became, and the more connections I was able to create. Transitioning from an athlete to a coach can come with some challenges. As a new coach, you are now in a place where you have to ask, what kind of coach do I want to be? You may not realize it now, but you are about to be someone's new role model. You go from a position as an athlete where your main focus is what your needs are to now having to care for the needs of a whole team. This is not an easy step, but as a former athlete, it can give you some advantages. I want to make it a point that you don't have to have had success as an athlete to be a successful coach, and vice versa. So for those of you who are once an athlete, means that you have real life experiences in sport, which can help put yourself in the shoes of the athletes you will meet down the line. It also means that you understand the hardships that come firsthand being an athlete, the emotions, the challenges, the failures and successes. You now have the opportunity to guide them and help them find their own success. Therefore, in this new state, it is important to reflect back to the coaches you have had in your time, good and bad. This is your opportunity to become the coach you've always wanted. Think back to what teaching styles you responded to better than others. You will discover that every coach has their own unique teaching style, and you will too in some time. The most common coaching styles fall into one of 4 major categories: democratic, autocratic, laissez-faire, and holistic. Democratic coaching is empathetic and values sportsmanship. Democratic coaching involves using feedback from athletes to help with their goal setting. It is athlete-centered and where coaches listen to what the athlete's goals are, and as a team, you work together to help them achieve success. Autocratic coaching involves telling rather than asking. An autocratic coach typically calls the shots and the athlete will follow. The athlete would have little to no involvement in the decision-making process. The coach will decide what to do and then present it to the athlete. This approach is best when athletes require a lot of direction. Laissez-faire is a hands-off approach that allows athletes to be accountable for their own training and practice. All the decision-making falls onto the athlete. As a coach, you would provide encouragement, guidance, and support when asked. This approach requires the least amount of direction. And holistic. This approach sees the whole person, recognizing that every athlete is a human first and a player second. This approach is about addressing all areas of the athlete's life, such as nutrition, sleep, stress management, and social connection. A coach using this approach understands that you cannot excel in one area without also paying attention to the others. But one coaching style is not necessarily superior to the rest. Some coaches will use elements of each when teaching. A lot of the time, it is dependent on the type of individual you are working with. But it takes time being able to read your athletes and understand what their needs are. It also takes time to establish your new coaching voice and how you want to present yourself to athletes. But with more and more practice, you'll discover who you are as a coach. With the change from athlete to coach comes new boundaries and power in your role. It can be hard to be a coach amongst fellow athletes you were once training with, but it is natural to want to remain close with the team. It's important to understand that being a coach, boundaries are very important. As a coach, you are now a role model for those around you. It is important that you are demonstrating positive behavior as a coach. The athletes you encounter will look up to you as you looked up to your coaches. Coaching responsibly plays a big role. That means making wise use of your new authority in a coaching position, making decisions in the best interest of athletes, their development, and well-being as a whole person. Be aware of your use of language around athletes to create a respectful space. You have to understand that as a coach, you may not want to speak to athletes the same way you would speak to your friends in private. This also means being aware of your actions around athletes. We live in a generation where social media is used to stay connected amongst peers. However, between coach and athlete, it can be inappropriate to have young athletes on Snapchat or Instagram. This is to avoid any abuse of power online. However, this doesn't mean you cannot have a close relationship with your athletes. It's very important to have an athlete-coach bond, as this will help athletes feel like they can trust you. At the end of the day, coaches are trying their best to make sure they can support their athletes and create a safe space. So if you're ever feeling unsure as to what actions may or may not be appropriate, ask a coach. Please ask someone, because anyone will want to help you and make sure that you're doing the right thing. And there's also lots of other resources made available through Sport Manitoba too. When I first started coaching, I didn't always take it seriously. I was frustrated that I couldn't participate with the others. And so a lot of the time, I was absent. I was there, but with not a lot to say. I was still accepting the fact that I wouldn't get to compete like I used to. Despite my attitude, my coaches understood that I was still learning how to go through this transition and how to become a coach. My coaches spoke to me and taught me that the way I present myself in front of athletes is an important skill to have. Body language plays a big role in the type of coach you are. They explained that by standing with my arms crossed or hands in my pocket can unintentionally give off a negative attitude towards athletes. Therefore, to have my hands free, I appear less rigid and more approachable. They also explained that as a coach, it is important to bring a positive attitude into the workplace, even if you're having a hard day. This is not to dismiss your feelings, but to keep the focus on the athletes. Athletes feed off of the type of energy you bring. It is important to lead with patience and be a calm presence, even when you're angry or frustrated. You'll need to adapt and learn to communicate effectively during these times. If you're teaching with enthusiasm and a positive tone, athletes are more likely to feel encouraged and work hard, versus teaching with a low, grumpy tone, appearing angry, hostile, or like you don't want to be there. The athletes will pick up on this energy and may feel discouraged or that they have done something wrong. Being a positive and supportive leader is crucial for athlete development and relationship. The time you spend with athletes is special. Athletes look to you as a leader, and they want your approval and to make you proud. That means you have to make sure you are emulating the type of coach you feel they deserve, doing your best to make their experience with you a positive and fun environment to develop their skills. Again, reflect back to your time as an athlete. Which coach would you prefer? It is important to understand that when it comes to coaching, whether you are brand new or have been coaching for 15 years, you are not alone. There's a whole coaching community out there. When you first start coaching, you have to understand that you may not have all the answers right away, and that is totally okay. You are learning how to teach and how to explain proper techniques, which can be difficult without the right tools. But one of the best tools is to find a mentor. A mentor can be anyone you trust or feel is knowledgeable. It can be a coach, a family member, or friends. Mentors serve as a support, there to help you through difficult scenarios and answer questions. So choose someone you feel has qualities you wish to adopt and can apply to your new coaching journey. It is very important to ask questions, and I highly encourage you to ask as many as you can. It's crucial to understand why you are teaching something. Knowing your own limitations in terms of knowledge and skills when making decisions or giving instructions is being a responsible coach. For example, if you are a former baseball player who has transitioned into coaching and are told to teach a group of athletes the proper way to throw, but you don't quite understand how to explain it, ask for some help. There are steps and biomechanics behind what a throw should look like. But for someone who has never needed to explain how to throw, or you just know how to, this can be challenging. But this is where mentors become very helpful. Learning the proper way to teach is crucial to how an athlete develops. So there are no dumb questions. Make sure you feel confident in what you are teaching. Another example is perhaps you have a group of athletes who don't seem to get along and are creating a negative space during training, but you aren't sure the best way to approach the situation. Ask for some advice. Managing emotions and behavior can be difficult, but as a coach, it is important to create a positive space for athletes to come and train. Tension can get high between athletes for many reasons, such as personal relationships. And so if you are finding it difficult to help your athletes, there is no shame in asking for support. Coaching takes just as much practice and time as being an athlete does. But when it comes to coaching, the benefits are endless. Coaching is the best way to stay involved in the sport that you love and give back to your community. Through coaching, you are able to create new relationships and network. You get the chance to empower a new generation of athletes while teaching the importance of physical activity. You get to help athletes improve their performance and build confidence by being a positive role model. And whether you realize it or not, you are more knowledgeable than you think. You have plenty to offer and have experiences that others can learn from. As a coach, you get to teach more than just sport. You're teaching personal self-development for yourself and athletes. This can be sportsmanship, interpersonal skills, and emotional control. Sport is more than just the physical. It coincides with the emotional and mental health. If you can be a coach that can give technical, tactical, and emotional advice, your athletes will succeed even more. I encourage all new coaches to take coaching seriously. I truly believe that coaches change lives. But this can either be in a positive or a negative way. A coach's impact is one of the most influential for a young athlete. This is all dependent on how you decide to teach and the values you bring. Sport has a special meaning for each individual. For many, sport is a place to escape difficult home lives or to work through mental health. As a coach, you may not realize it, but you're helping an athlete in more ways than imaginable. So that means bring your 100% effort every time you coach, because you may not always know what athletes are going through, but you are helping them by just being the best role model you can be. Now, I say this because during one of my first years as a junior coach, I met a very special athlete that will stay near and dear to my heart. Until meeting her, I was still learning to keep a positive mindset about coaching, even though I was pretty sure it wasn't my thing. Until I met a new athlete who had just joined the gym. I met her on one of my very first days as a junior coach. She was put into a recreational level, but I knew right away she had great potential for a competitive stream. I was lucky enough to coach with her closely and help her fall in love with gymnastics. I could see in her eyes that she had found the place she needed to be. She was the sweetest child and grew a strong connection towards me. I knew she would be special. After coaching her first year, I recommended to my senior coaches that she be placed into a competitive stream, which my coaches agreed with. I felt so proud of her and myself. I couldn't believe how invested I was in her journey. I wanted to see her progress and grow, which was a feeling I had never experienced towards anyone before this time in my life. I felt like I was finally starting to understand coaching. As my athlete moved up to a competitive stream, so did I. I was now in charge of coaching a level 1 competitive team. I felt so excited to be trusted with their journey. And so I entered a new gymnastics season, excited to teach my very first competitive team, ready to greet everyone when I was welcomed by a familiar face. My athlete who I recommended to move up would now be training with me. It was now my responsibility to help her fall in love with competing and help her find success. As the year went by, I felt so proud to watch my group of athletes present their skills at competitions and be happy doing it. At the end of my first competitive year, I decided to set a goal for myself. I wanted to continue to move up in levels as much as I wanted my athletes to. And so, as my group of athletes progressed, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to follow them on their journey. So, as levels 2, 3, and 4 came around, I have now had the opportunity to watch this special group of athletes grow up for the last 4 years. At this point in my coaching journey, I was nothing but dedicated towards their success. I felt proud to have come this far in my personal growth to where I first started to where I was now. I spent 4 years coaching that same group of athletes, just trying to keep up with how fast they were moving up. I wanted to expand my knowledge and skills so I could be the best coach for them. I wanted to be able to help them succeed, and to do that, I needed to make sure I was coaching the best that I could. I made sure to ask plenty of questions along the way and making sure I was teaching skills properly and safely. I didn't want to be anything less than worthy for my team. However, COVID had other plans. Due to the pandemic, classes became difficult to run and hours as a coach became limited. I knew in order to continue my growth as a coach that I'd have to make a very difficult decision. I wasn't going to let COVID stop my coaching journey, and although it was out of anyone's control, I knew it was my time to move on and coach at another gym. Now, this decision did not come lightly, as I had grown up at Court Gymnastics Center. I had some of my best days and worst days in the gym, and I owe much of my success to everyone who nurtured me within those 4 walls. It broke my heart to leave, but I knew it was my time to move on. On my last day, I made sure to say goodbye to all of my athletes, coworkers, and senior coaches. This wasn't just a typical job. I was saying goodbye to a family. I spent the whole day saying goodbye to everyone, but there was one person waiting very patiently with something to say to me. My athlete from day one. I knew saying goodbye to her would be the hardest one of all. She came up to me and gave me the world's biggest hug and began to cry. I comforted her as I could understand how difficult it must be to watch a coach move on. However, she wiped her tears and then explained to me that I was the reason she was still alive. She told me that she had been struggling with her mental health over the years, and that the only thing that kept her going was coming to practice every week and getting to see me. Hearing this broke my heart. She was only 12 years old. I couldn't believe how much pain she was in this whole time, and I felt so ashamed to leave her at this point. But she ended up being the one to comfort me in the end by saying, "It's okay to leave, because now I know how to be strong, and don't worry, I'll continue to work hard at gymnastics and make you proud." This was the true moment I understood the powerful impact behind coaching. I will never forget this moment because I learned a very special lesson. Coaches change lives. This is when I truly felt it, saw it, and believed it. I now knew the impact I had on the athletes I encountered and never wanted to take that responsibility for granted. I chose this quote by Angela Duckworth. It says, "Nobody wants to show you the hours and hours of becoming. They'd rather show the highlights of what they've become." I chose this quote to serve as a reminder and a reassurance that coaching is not always easy. It takes time and a lot of personal growth. Even though coaches are teaching others, there are many useful lessons to be learned for yourself through coaching. You will learn to be an efficient communicator, problem solve, and become a team player like never before. The more you coach, the more situations you will encounter that will help you grow into a well-rounded coach. I also want to point out that you don't have to be a high-level competitive coach to be successful in this next step. Coaches from all levels can make a difference and are equally as knowledgeable. So whether you're coaching at the grassroots level or at an elite performance level, just know you are successful either way. For those wanting to become a coach, make sure you are coaching for the right reasons. Coaching is a powerful role. It is not always easy, but the hard work pays off. So consider coaching if you aspire to serve as a role model in your community, want to create a positive sporting experience for young athletes, and help change lives. Remember that even if you feel like you may not have enough experience as an athlete to become a coach, as long as you have the eagerness to learn, you will find success. Use this drive to obtain more education and surround yourself with positive peers to help you. As a new coach, I encourage you to set goals for yourself, just like you would as an athlete. Make sure they are specific and attainable. This will help you growing and improving with every step you take. Coaching is not always easy, but like training, practice makes perfect. The more you coach, the more you will learn, not just about your sport, but about yourself. If you are ever searching for further information about coaching, here is a list of great sources that you can use whether you're a new coach or experienced coach. There are also grants and educational resources made available for coaches through Sport Manitoba. And don't forget, this week is still National Coaching Week, so I encourage you to take as many courses as you can before the week is over. And if you ever have any more questions, I encourage you to reach out to coaching@sportmanitoba.ca. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Like I said, I left some time for anyone who has any questions, comments, or if anybody wants to share their experience in sport or coaching. The floor is all yours now, everyone. And feel free to use the chat as well if you're not comfortable speaking out loud.
Yeah, so again, everyone, if you have something you'd like to share with Ariella or a question or a comment, just because it's difficult to kind of see who would like to say something, maybe just raise the icon, the raising hand icon if you'd like to share something or make a comment or ask a question. But see a lot of comments coming in on the chat. There's a comment, Ariella, that says, I like the point about emotional regulation. It's sometimes hard as a passionate coach. Anything else you'd like to add to that point?
Sure, and maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more on your question, but yeah, sometimes it can be hard to separate the emotions you share with your athletes. I know personally, I grow strong connections towards my athletes, but also have to remind myself that this is someone who I need to make sure I'm creating boundaries with and not stepping over any lines. Because at the end of the day, I am still their coach. So as much as I want to be emotional and show my emotional side, because that I think helps athletes see that you're a human. You're not just some person there standing and talking to them all day. It's important to show that you have an emotional side as well.
Great. There is also another comment on the chat. Someone says they're on year 8 of coaching and they're still getting their feel for their coaching journey. Um, do you have any other tips or tricks for experienced coaches to continue learning or any advice for them to continue their learning?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I've also been coaching for 7 years, right? And I still feel like I have so much to learn. And I think like I could coach for 20 years and still have so much to learn. And I think the best tool is looking up to those before you as well. I've learned so much from the coaches that I've been around and the coaches who have been coaching for 15 plus years. I take the time to observe how they're talking and how they're managing groups. And I take a lot of mental notes and notice what they're doing. And I see that it works. And I try to adopt things that other coaches are doing. So you can learn a lot from the peers around you. Yeah, for sure. We are definitely lifelong learners. Absolutely, I agree. And coaching is always changing as well. So you have to adapt and make sure you're keeping up with everything. Just being the best coach you can be.
Okay, we have some more comments coming in, Ariel. I'll just read them to you.
Sure.
When leaving your role as a coach from your original gym, did you find it hard joining a new gym and transitioning to new talent in a new area? I struggle with the emotional tie I have with my team and wanting to upgrade or transition to a different role.
That's a great question because I definitely was very nervous to join a brand new team because I was so used to training at the same gym, now coaching in the same gym. I knew everyone and everyone knew me. So now I was entering a new space where nobody knew me and I didn't know anyone. It's very intimidating. But I think the best thing is your coaching speaks for yourself. And as much as you may want to make friends with everyone, I think making sure that you are showing off your skills will show a lot as to who you are as a coach and a person. And so it does take time as well, like making those new relations and being comfortable around new people. It takes time, especially making new connections with the kids you are about to meet, right? Again, they don't know who you are. So as long as you're showing your best sides and being the best role model you can be while you're doing that, they will see very quickly that you're someone you can trust and they're going to want to keep coming to you. Great question, though.
Yeah, and just backpacking off that, I'd also like to mention that many sports and sport organizations have mentorship programs that new coaches can join. So if you, wherever you're from here across Canada, if you can reach out to your provincial sport organization, for example, here in Manitoba, we have Volleyball Manitoba, Manitoba Gymnastics, Basketball Manitoba. I would inquire to them and see what kind of mentorship opportunities and programs that they have. We also have another comment slash question, Ariella. I'm on year 3 of coaching a girls softball team and played softball growing up since I was 5 till age 21. And sometimes I feel like I don't have enough expertise to coach them, even though I know the sport inside and out. What do you do in that kind of situation?
That's a great question, Courtney, because I think I feel the same way as well. I grew up, this was my only sport. I was only dedicated to this, but there's still a lot to learn, right? Like we aren't professionals and we don't know everything. A lot of the time, I look things up on YouTube. I like to look up how to coach certain skills and why to coach those certain skills. And I find hearing it from another perspective or another person that's maybe not in your gym or coaches that you're surrounded with is very helpful to me. It gives you a new way to understand skills. And maybe like after coaching, you take an hour out of your day to look up new skills just to see what else you can learn. Because at the end of the day, you won't be able to know everything right off the bat. Like it is going to take time. But dedicating time out of your day to do that, you're going to just grow and grow as a coach. And the more and more you'll know.
Okay, awesome. So we are gonna leave about 2 more minutes for any more questions or comments people want to either throw in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Yeah, 2 more minutes for that, and then we might wrap up the session. So if you have anything you'd like to say to Ariella, uh, feel free to do so. Okay, one just came in. Did you find it difficult in the beginning navigating the NCCP certifications, or did you have anyone to guide you through the process?
Great question. As a gym, my senior coaches sent a group of us new coaches to do the courses together so that we could ask each other questions and we weren't alone while doing it. So I found that very helpful. So you may not be coaching with the same people in your gym, but if you find another friend who's from a different sport and maybe you guys just want to sit together and do the course together, it is helpful to have someone by you. And if you have any questions, and I think that's important, is just being to having someone by you if you need it. And I thought that was really helpful to have a whole team with me throughout the entire thing.
And I will just add to that question. If you are a coach on this call and you are in Manitoba, Sport Manitoba Coaching, we assist coaches of all levels or even beginners in starting their NCCP journey. So if you have any questions at all regarding the NCCP process, please feel free to reach out to Sport Manitoba Coaching. Our contact info can be found on the website. But also, each province has their own coaching representatives for the Coaching Association of Canada. So, for example, there is the Coaches Association of Ontario, Via Sport in BC, Coach New Brunswick, Coach Nova Scotia, Alberta Sport. So, if you have any questions regarding NCCP, I would reach out to your provincial territorial coaching reps. Or also your provincial sport organizations. If you're a member of a sport organization, they will have the knowledge and the steps for how you can start or continue your journey in NCCP. If no one else has any more questions or comment, oh, okay, we have one that just came in. It's a comment and it says, imposter syndrome is a real thing, but the best approach is always being humble as a coach. You aren't expected to know everything, but having the passion to find the answer goes a long way to foster a healthy relationship with athletes.
For sure. I totally agree with that comment. Like, don't pretend like you know everything because at the end of the day, you're teaching athletes like proper skill development. And so if you are teaching things that maybe you don't know, it might like suffer them in the end. So take the time to ask questions. Like there's no shame in asking questions at all. If anything, you're a better coach if you are asking questions.
So yeah, I don't want to cut anybody off or before they put something in the chat or if they want to say something, but maybe 1 more minute and we will wrap up the session. So if you have any other last minute thoughts or questions you'd like to share with Ariella, please do so now. Okay, so I think with that, we will conclude the session. Ariella, any last minute thoughts you'd like to say to wrap up the session?
Well, I want to say thank you again for listening. I felt very honored to get to share my coaching journey with you all. And I encourage you all to continue coaching if you're just starting. And if you've been coaching for years, keep going at it because there's still so much to learn. And very proud of you all because coaching is not always easy, but it takes a very special person to do so. And you are all in the right space. So Thank you so much, everyone, and continue on your coaching journeys.
And with that, we'll conclude this session. So yeah, feel free to log off now, but hang back if you'd like.
Thanks, everyone.